her statement by Minister indicating that copies will be provided to us shortly, I presume within the next 5 or so minutes. Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to once again honor the commitment I made to provide periodic updates to this honorable House and to the people of Jamaica on the status of the work to reform the Constitution of Jamaica. I indicated in my last ministerial statement here on September 24, after my sectoral debate presentation on June 11, that in accordance with the approval granted by the Cabinet, drafting instructions were issued to the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel on June 24, 2024. The Chief Parliamentary Counsel, who has personal conduct of the matter, up to the time of that last statement, had dispatched 2 bills to the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs on July 22, 2024. One is in respect of the amendment of the Constitution to, among other things, effect its patriation and Jamaicanization, as well as the establishment of Jamaica as a republic. The other is to provide for the votes of electors to be taken with respect to those amendments that are required to be submitted to electors pursuant to Section 49(3) of the Constitution, commonly known as a referendum. That bill is a Referendum Bill 2024. Since then, Madam Speaker, 6 revised drafts of the Constitution Amendment, Republic of Jamaica Bill were dispatched by the CPC on August 27, September 16, November 13, November 22, November 29, and December 2, 2024, following further drafting instructions after reviews by the Drafting Strategy Subcommittee of the Constitutional Reform Committee, as well as the internal ministry team, plus the learned Attorney General. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to inform this Honorable House and the people of Jamaica that review of the bill to amend the Constitution is far advanced. It is quite possible to complete the remaining steps and have the bill tabled as early as next week. As early as next week, before the Christmas break. Possible. Madam Speaker, the proposed bill contains 36 clauses. A new Chapter 9A for a proposed Section 134A, a fourth schedule for national items. It is intended to achieve, Madam Speaker, the bill is intended to achieve national goals about which there is no dispute on either side of the parliamentary aisles or within the political parties, to the best of my knowledge. When passed into law, the bill will allow for the Constitution of Jamaica to be put in proper form as the supreme law of the land. It is worth reminding everyone that although drafted in Jamaica and debated in the Jamaican legislature, the Constitution came into effect through an imperial order in council as a schedule to it. And we know that form of subsidiary legislation is inappropriate for a supreme law. On this, there is no dispute anywhere, as far as I'm aware. When passed into law, the bill will also abolish the constitutional monarchy and replace the hereditary monarch of England with a Jamaican president as Jamaica's formal head of state, thereby transitioning Jamaica to a republic. There is no dispute anywhere, to the best of my knowledge, about the attainment of this national goal. Madam Speaker, the bill goes further. It will entrench the Electoral Commission of Jamaica in the Constitution, thereby giving it a permanent place in our laws. Again, there is no dispute anywhere, to the best of my knowledge, about the attainment of this national goal. Madam Speaker, further, the bill proposes the incorporation in the Constitution for treatment of national items, including national symbols and emblems, the national anthem, the national pledge, the national flag, the national prayer, the national song, among other things. This is an aspiration of the people of Jamaica for a long time. And to the best of my knowledge, there is no dispute anywhere about taking steps to achieve this goal. Additionally, the bill proposes to strengthen the alteration mechanism of the Constitution to enable more efficient use of legislative time and greater ease in achieving other agreed reform goals without compromising the guardrails. Madam Speaker, administration after administration has lamented the tight belt that is around the Constitution and the deliberate slow pace at which constitutional reform moves. When passed into law, the bill will enable greater ease of reform going forward. It will also provide clarity on citizenship, acquisition, renunciation, disqualification, among other things. It will also clarify the qualification and disqualification for membership in the House, qualification to or for, and disqualification from membership in the Houses of Parliament. And the appointment of additional senators independently of the political parties represented in the House of Representatives after a general election. Madam Speaker, this phased reform of the Constitution is taking place in a very challenging context. It is agreed and admitted, but you never get a chance to wish away your context. You have to understand the challenges and turn those challenges into opportunities. Madam Speaker, Section 49 of the Constitution prescribes the manner in which the Constitution is to be altered. By way of reminder, a bill for an act of Parliament seeking to alter the provisions that we are seeking to alter in this phase of the reform work must be tabled in the House of Representatives, and a period of 3 months must elapse between the introduction of the bill in the House and the commencement of the first debate on the whole text of the bill in the House. A further 3 months must elapse between the conclusion of the debate and the passing of the bill by the House. The bill must be passed in each House by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all members of the House. And thereafter, the bill must be submitted to the electors qualified to vote for the election of members of the House of Representatives, not less than 2 nor more than 6 months after its passage through both houses. And it must be approved by the majority of the electors voting. We have not had a referendum in independent Jamaica. And there are talks all over of the challenges that the holding of a referendum pose. But there is no escaping the approval of the people in order to make the changes to achieve the agreed national goals. Madam Speaker, where we are in the life of this Parliament, and having regard to the constitutional timelines, the work will not be complete in this Parliament. But in its wisdom, the Constitution allows for the work to be done over the life of more than one Parliament. So, Madam Speaker, among the challenges in the context in which we find ourselves are 2 major ones. As I just said, the time where we are in the life of the Parliament, having regard to the prescribed timelines. And the other, Madam Speaker, is the importance of cooperation from the parliamentary opposition. The Constitutional Reform Committee, providing expert advice and guidance to the government and the people, comprises representatives from both houses on both sides of the aisles, as well as representatives from the public.
House Leader, before you stand to ask the Minister what additional time is needed, I don't know if you observe from the opposition benches discomfort at the presentation ongoing without them having a copy. To this minute, I also do not have a copy, nor does the Parliament. And though it is not a requirement by the standing order, it has been a practice to share a copy of the presentation so that members of the opposition are allowed to follow the presentation. For the Speaker, I am hoping ministers appreciate, once I do not have a copy of the presentation, it limits my ability to determine what additional time may be needed, and therefore not any significant departure from the time limit will be accommodated. So, House Leader, from the opposition benches, I have asked them to sit and allow the minister to complete her presentation because her time was almost expired. And in keeping with good practice going forward, I'd ask you not to ask the members for a significant length of time, because we are going to have to become a very disciplined house as we go forward.
I fully concur with the sentiments you have expressed.
I just want to, Madam Speaker, I just want to...
Also, you have to do one mic at a time, otherwise they're very soft.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Speaker, I just want to express my disappointment that we are proceeding this matter on a matter such as this. This is to do with the total overhaul of our Constitution, something which this minister has been pursuing for a few years now, and in which we have had some degree of engagement, as unsatisfactory as we have found that. For the minister to be making an important presentation of this nature to the House without providing copies in accordance, in accordance with the customs of the House is unacceptable. And I would ask that that be corrected without further delay.
Madam Speaker.
Minister, turn your mic off, please. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition point is taken. We made the arrangements for the soft copy to be provided and for a printing of this soft copy to happen while the member was speaking, and Parliament gave permission, so to speak, for her to start the speaking. And Madam Speaker, this is unprecedented, and it is not, and I agree with you, it's not a practice that we offer any comfort to. The Leader of the Opposition has made the point, and the member may truncate at this point to allow for the printing of the soft copy which she has sent, so that the distribution can take place, and I will have a recommittal of statement by ministers in order for her to make the full presentation, if it so pleases you, Madam Speaker.
Minister, were you able to forward a soft copy to the Parliament?
Yes, Madam Speaker, let me just to indicate that it was not my intention to commence the statement without making a copy available to both sides. It was not my intention. And in fact, I had asked that the item be recommitted to enable the transition of the statement to the opposition ahead of my commencing. Yes. So, Madam Speaker, I
Minister,
crave your leave. I will pause and ensure that the
Would you give us an idea of how much longer your presentation is?
About 10 minutes or less.
All right.
But, Madam Speaker, I will pause and allow the statement to be
House Leader has indicated that he would prefer to have a recommittal.
Yes.
And we will be happy to
Yes. That is exactly what
operate in good order, in keeping with
It's not
that
out of order.
directive.
Not out of order.
Thanks, Minister. Announcements? Opposition Leader?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have from time to time consistently supported the motions to extend the duration of these zones of special operations. There are two things I would just want to say this afternoon. First of all, in the case of, I think, Denham Town and Mount Salem, these have been in place now for 7 years or around that period of time. You know, a long time. And I really wondered, what is the strategy for these two communities to exit being in these zones? Or is it unknown as to how long they will remain in zones of special operations? I don't think when we first learned of the decision to utilize this particular mechanism, it was envisaged that communities would be permanently within a zone of special operations, which by its very name suggests a status which is not the normal status for a community. And indeed, the legal regime of a ZOSO is tailored to afford the security forces enhanced powers around maintaining control and peace and stability in those communities, which necessitates some amount of adjustment to the freedoms of the residents. So I'd like the minister to give us an indication of what would be the timeline or the criteria that would be considered as resulting in a decision to allow communities to exit this status of being zones of special operations. The second point I wish to make was those things which he mentioned about enhancing those communities, birth certificates, field trips, other psychosocial interventions, infrastructure improvements around things like zinc fences and so on. These are all welcome and good things. The only thing I would say is that there are many, many communities that need that type of intervention, just as much as the 7 that are here. I mean, indeed, I can tell you that in my own constituency, we are very close to the Denham Town zone, and the social conditions that exist in Denham Town are not clearly distinguishable from those that exist in Trenchtown or Craigtown or Jonestown or Rosetown. Yet Denham Town has had 7 years of special attention from the social investment aspect of it, while the surrounding communities, all they really get is the CDF expenditure and any other additional expenditure that is generalized across members of parliament. So, I think that the criteria or the cause or the driving factors that have necessitated that type of special intervention ought to be more generalized across all communities that need that type of intervention, so that there isn't this prioritization or even some would say discrimination in favor of some and not others when all have that need. So those are the 2 points I wish to make. I'd like to hear the minister's response, in particular on the first of them, and an indication as to what the strategy really is in relation to these zones, when we can expect communities to transition out of being in these zones. And, at one time, I think he had indicated that there were plans to have many other zones rather than just limited to 7. We haven't heard anything more on that. So what your current thinking is on that would also be of interest to us, Minister. Thank you. But we support the motion. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I paused, I was speaking to the context in which this important constitutional reform work is happening. I indicated that Section 49 of the Constitution prescribes the manner in which the Constitution is to be altered.
Madam, just a minute, please. The extension to grant you the permission notes. The request is on the floor for the extension.
Was done.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. You may continue, madam.
It's a lot I'm learning today about perseverance. I was reminding the Honourable House, Mr. Speaker, that a bill for an Act of Parliament seeking to alter the provisions of the Constitution that we're seeking to must be tabled in the House of Representatives. A period of 3 months must elapse between the introduction of the bill in the House and the commencement of the first debate on the whole text of the bill in the House. A further 3 months must elapse between the conclusion of the debate and the passing of the bill in the House. A reminder that the bill must be passed by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of the House. And thereafter, it must be submitted to the electors qualified to vote for the election of members of the House of Representatives. And that submission has to be done no less than 2 months, no more than 6 months after the passage of the bill in both houses. And then the majority of the electors voting must approve if both houses have passed the bill. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I repeat that based on the prescribed constitutional timelines for this type of bill, the work will not be complete within the life of the current Parliament. The referendum to achieve the approval of the electorate cannot be held before the dissolution of this Parliament, but in keeping with Section 49, the bill can be passed in 2 successive sessions of the House of Representatives, whether of the same Parliament or not. It is my hope that the bill seeking to give effect to the changes being pursued can be tabled, debated, and passed in the life of the current Parliament, and that the referendum be held during the next Parliament. Madam Speaker, I'm under no illusion as to the hurdles that will have to be crossed. We only have an outer life for the life of the Parliament, and so elections, the Parliament can be dissolved sooner, but if it is not dissolved sooner, it will require cooperation between the opposition and the government on this matter. Although the Constitution provides that where the bill is rejected by the Senate, either because the requisite vote was not received, or it was not dealt with within a month after it was sent there, and that the bill can be sent back to the House of Representatives for further deliberation. Madam Speaker, for that part to be achieved, it would take us into the next Parliament. And so I'm happy that the leader of the parliamentary opposition is still in the House, and the member of the parliamentary opposition from the House who sits on the Constitutional Reform Committee is also here. Through you, Madam Speaker, I would say to the leader of the parliamentary opposition that I don't believe member was able to provide an update to you on where we are because of absence from the last set of meetings. I did, however, communicate to the member the intention to proceed with the work to have the bill tabled in Parliament. It is my hope that dialogue will take place between the two sides, because I know that there is no disagreement on the goals being pursued. In order to achieve the other goals, the proposed alteration to Section 49 will make that work much easier. If we give up now, it would be a betrayal of everything we have worked for, and a betrayal of what we hope to achieve. We must persevere. And as I think about the need for perseverance, I recall someone saying persevering is like tending seeds. You do not see the results right away, but if you keep tending the seeds, keep nurturing, keep watering, eventually you will have a garden full of abundance. So if we keep at it, eventually we will achieve all the reform goals that we desire to achieve. But we can only get there if we keep at it and if we are prepared to take the steps one by one. Making progress on the goals for independent Jamaica has been slow on many legs of the journey. It has not been a journey of quick wins on fundamental matters. However, we have seen positive difference where there has been sustained effort and collaboration between the two sides of the Parliament. And we need look no further than the progress we have made on the economic front. So, at this juncture, it cannot be about how we feel because of where we are in the life of the Parliament. There is still enough time to get it done. And if we give up now, it will be a betrayal of what we hope to achieve and the goals that we have set as a nation. Too often we convince ourselves that in order to achieve greatness, we must perform grand, extraordinary things. We must do it all at once. And as someone has said, we trick ourselves into believing that momental leaps are the only way to move forward. And that if we do not make a huge splash, then what we are doing doesn't matter. But this mentality is devastating, and even more devastating in an approach to constitutional reform. If we give up now, it will be a betrayal. It would be like standing at the base of a mountain, looking up at the peak and feeling paralyzed by the sheer size of it. The enormity of the task ahead makes it feel impossible. And so we hesitate and we wait and we make excuses and we tell ourselves why it can't be happen, why it cannot happen. But we can't wish away the context. We shouldn't allow fear and doubt to grip our hearts, because in our minds we have already failed at this stage of the Parliament, or because we desire to achieve other goals which are not in this phase. Success is built in small daily actions. Persevering. It's not about the giant leaps. It's not about all or nothing. And there is no dispute about the goals that we're seeking to achieve to make real progress for an independent Jamaica. I urge that the two sides of the Parliament find what it takes to make the incremental steps and have the bill passed so that it can be sent to the people for their approval. Madam Speaker, I close by just repeating that the proposed alteration to Section 49 will make it far less difficult to achieve the other reform goals that must come. But we cannot and should not give up now. So I am very pleased to report progress on this phase of the work to reform the Constitution of Jamaica, and to say to the people of Jamaica that they stand to win with a people-centered government. They stand to win. I look forward to tabling the bill soonest. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank the Minister for her presentation. I don't intend to say very much today, other than to point out that when the draft report of the Constitutional Reform Committee was shared with me, I put in writing my concerns with aspects of what was being proposed. I got a response to those concerns, making certain arguments, putting certain points forward, and I responded to that as well in writing, in detail. There are a number of issues which are unresolved arising out of that exchange of correspondence. And these are important matters that will affect whether or not the opposition is able or willing to support the bills that are being put forward. I don't know what the content of the bills is. And obviously, until I see it, and until we have an opportunity to see it, or see them, because it's two, I understand, we can't commit ourselves one way or the other. I note that Section 49 is to be amended. Section 49 provides the guardrails in the Constitution. It is the provision that sets out how the Constitution is amended. It sets out different procedures for amending different aspects of the Constitution, depending really on how fundamental those issues are. So there are some amendments to the Constitution that can be done by a simple majority in each House. There are others that require a 2/3 majority of the members in each House. And in the Senate, as is well known, the governing side does not have 2/3. So amendments which require a 2/3 majority can't pass without the opposition being on board. And then there's a third category which require not only that the legislation be passed by that majority, but also that it be approved subsequently by the vote of the people, in what's referred to as a referendum. Originally, my understanding was that what was being proposed in the first phase of the reform process was to get over those things that would require amendment by referendum. Therefore, the subsequent reforms would be things that don't require a referendum. Now I'm hearing that Section 49 is to be amended to make it that much easier to deal with those reforms that don't require a referendum. I'm not sure why it's considered necessary to do that, given that the guardrails applicable to those amendments which don't require a referendum are either a 2/3 majority of each House separately voting on it, or if it's something relatively unimportant or relatively uncontroversial, which is not subject to any form of entrenchment, a simple majority which the government has the capacity to pass on its own. The Constitutional Reform Committee did not get into any discussion as to the structure of Section 49, which is a very complex provision, and was no doubt the subject of a lot of consideration by the persons who originated the Constitution prior to independence. We have not been consulted on that matter, and I consider it necessary to see that. I think something of that nature ought to be shared and subject to some amount of consultation between the two major political parties before embarking on it, because it is likely to be something which is going to be scrutinized very carefully, given the importance of the guardrails in the Constitution. So, while I understand the minister's anxiety and the desire to move forward as expeditiously as possible, I would ask her to bear in mind that this is a situation where one hand simply cannot clap. And without the support of this side, this process is going nowhere. And we have put on the table issues of real concern, and unless those are addressed, our support is not guaranteed. And I have not heard anything it's probably more than 6 months. I can't even remember when the report was, I think, finalized around March, April. We're now in December. I've had no interaction with the government on this matter since I submitted my final letter in that fairly short period of correspondence when the report was being finalized. It doesn't augur well for consensus when we proceed like that. And I would suggest that they may want to take some time to engage the opposition on our concerns if there's a genuine hope of moving forward to passing this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Opposition Leader. Minister?
Madam Speaker, just to assure the Leader of the Opposition that there is no intention or desire to not have meaningful exchange. I think the absence of the opposition members on the committee has prevented the kind of update that we hope would have been provided on an ongoing basis. Just to say, Madam Speaker, when the CRC was designed, it was designed taking into account the need for bipartisan support as well as the people's approval. And that is why it is structured with membership from government and opposition, Senate and House, and the public. Madam Speaker, the committee, working in the committee has been extremely frustrating at times because on many occasions members expressed the view that it was clear that efforts were being made to derail the work and preventing real progress from being made. If the mechanism places the opposition at the table, where every issue is being discussed with candor, openness, and detail, where no view is shut down, where we have deliberated and never disagreed disrespectfully. You know, at some stage, the responsibility for the lack of update has to be owned because the mechanism was there. I want to thank the leader of the opposition for the comments he sent. They were considered, the responses came. Some of his suggestions were taken on board and would be reflected in the updated recommendation. I think there are two issues that I understand are of concern: the issue of impeachment and the issue of the final court, coming down to it. All right, the issue of the mechanism for appointing the president has been reviewed, and we took into account suggestion made by former Prime Ministers Pattison and Golding, as well as other comments. And that revised mechanism takes into account the fact that we are not moving to an executive presidential system. There is a two-stage process of nomination and confirmation, and you will see what has been put forward from the recommendation. We have had proposals for an expansion in the body for approval. That there was no consensus on that, but we have noted it and will send it forward. I think the opportunity will be provided for further deliberation at the Joint Select Committee, but you will not have to wait until then because you will see the bill long before. Just to go to the issue of the proposed amendment to Section 49. Section 49 is a deeply entrenched section and therefore can only be changed with the approval of the people and the holding of a referendum. There is no intention to weaken the guardrails, absolutely none. In fact, the proposed amendment strengthens the guardrail because the proposal includes tabling of a bill to amend the Constitution in the House of Representatives in respect of the ordinary provisions, a delay period of 14 days between the tabling and the commencement on the debate, and another 14 days between the conclusion of the debate and the passing. That is improvement. Not weakening. There is no proposal to change the vote that is required in respect of any category of provision. So there is no fear that a 2/3 majority will be changed in any way. There is proposal in respect of efficient use of the parliamentary time and also to make correction of cross-references easier. it really shouldn't require going to a referendum to alter a cross-reference or to delete a section of the Constitution that has been repealed. And the proposal is to make it easier to add provisions to the entrenched sections, not to take away.
Minister, opposition is asking to ask an additional question.
Yes.
The statement by
I would
Minister,
ask you
I
to
didn't
allow
expect
it.
to become a debate. And I know you would ask me to allow it. However, there are 3 members of parliament seated here with persons who have visited the parliament and have been waiting for an extended period to hear their state of the constituency debate. So I'm going to ask both sides to very quickly wrap up. Leader of opposition business.
Madam Speaker, that's just a simple question. Would the minister agree that all previous substantial changes to the Constitution came about from consultation and approval from the opposition before tabling of the bill in Parliament? And would the minister not see that as a better course than as you're proposing to table a bill that we haven't seen before tabling? Is that really the wise course to take, Minister?
This is how I will answer. I am mindful of the constitutional arrangement, and it is and has always been the approach of the government to provide a mechanism for consultation and bipartisan work. But you would appreciate that you can't delegate the responsibility of government. You have to get on with the work. And so, the lack of update to the leader of the opposition has to be owned by the opposition members on the committee. But my short answer is I will always take the better approach. And you can be assured that the bill will be viewed. The next meeting of the CRC is set for tomorrow, and notice was given more than a week ago. So I hope that the members will be present and that the mechanism will allow for the information to be transmitted and then other steps be taken to have the cross-aisle conversation.
Thank you, Minister. Leader of government business, would you be so kind to stand and
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the continuation of the state of the constituency debate be now ensued, and the speakers today will be the member from St. James Central and Deputy Speaker of the House, Mr. Hero Clark, and he'll be followed by the member from St. Andrew Western, Mr. Anthony Hilton, and the member from St. Elizabeth Northeast, Mr. Delroy Slowly, in that order. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
thank you, House Leader. Members in the House, today is House Leader's birthday. It is remiss of me to have had such a busy schedule today that we forgot to give him a round of applause on the decks. You know what we do, we bang the decks very, very hard today. I can't hear you. Our House Leader continues to look extremely young. I won't ask how old are you now. And he continues to be very vibrant, energetic, and continues to rake in tourism dollars for the citizens of Jamaica. Happy birthday, House Leader. Our first speaker from St. James Central, Deputy